This isn't a mistake. This is a mutiny.
So, am I right in thinking the game was already over at that point?
The moment she lied, the contract was void. What followed wasn't a divorce. It was damage liquidation.
Okay, that's a huge development. What's the right play here in your book? Welcome back to The Rulebook. I'm Cal Jensen.
And I'm Frank Miller.
For the men who join us every week, you know what we do here. We don't deal in hypotheticals or therapy speak. We look at real-world situations and break down the playbook. We're here to talk about the rules, the ones that govern our lives, our work, and our homes. And more importantly, what to do when someone else decides to throw that rulebook out the window.
That's right, Cal. Today, we're looking at a story about a man who discovered the foundation of his house was a lie. He found cracks everywhere he looked. So he didn't patch it up. He tore the whole damn thing down to the studs and decided to build something new. Something that was his own.
It's a powerful letter, and it comes to us from a listener named Darren in Ohio. He found himself in a position no man ever wants to be in, but he handled it with a kind of clarity that I think a lot of our listeners will respect. If this is the kind of direct, no-nonsense conversation you've been looking for, do us a favor right now. Hit that subscribe button and give this episode a like. It tells us we're on the right track. Frank, you ready to get into this?
Let's get to it.
All right, this is Darren's story.
My doctor called on a Wednesday. His voice was clinical, detached, asking if I'd had any new partners recently. I was sitting in my truck, staring out at the empty freight lot behind the warehouse, the phone pressed hard against my ear. I hadn't been with anyone but my wife for 12 years, but she had just come back from a college friend's wedding, and in that moment, the entire foundation of my life fractured. For 12 years, I believed I could read the temperature in our home before I even opened the front door. I'm Darren Evers, 51 years old, a logistics manager from just outside Columbus, Ohio. I build my life on predictable routes and clear schedules. That belief in predictability, in knowing my own home, ended the Monday my wife came back from that wedding. She arrived later than expected, dragging a small overnight bag that seemed heavier than its contents. I was in the kitchen frying eggs, the familiar sizzle a stark contrast to the sudden chill she brought in with her. Her hair was still curled from the night before, makeup faded but not scrubbed clean. She offered a tired explanation about rough traffic, and I tried to believe her. I wanted to. But something was off in her movements, a carefulness that didn't belong in our kitchen. She spoke as if balancing each word on a scale, measuring its weight before letting it go. Her phone stayed clutched in her hand, a new, inseparable limb. When I offered to help her unpack, she just waved me off and headed straight for the shower, leaving a trail of unfamiliar silence behind her. Later, I saw her wedding ring sitting on the nightstand. In 12 years, it had never spent a night there. Tuesday brought more of the same cold courtesy. We were polite acquaintances, cohabitating, not partners sharing a life. I watched her at the breakfast table, her fingers flying across her phone screen, her eyebrows twitching at an incoming message. There was no smile, just a focused, locked-in intensity. The woman I knew shared funny texts, read articles aloud. This woman was a vault. Then came the Wednesday call from my doctor. It was supposed to be a routine follow-up. I was expecting a lecture on sodium, not a clinical inquiry into my fidelity. He told me an infection had shown up in my blood work, something sexually transmitted. The world tilted. My mind raced, frantically trying to find any other explanation, any possibility, except the one staring me in the face. I hadn't been with anyone else. The numbers didn't lie. The facts were cold and stark. I sat in my truck for a full hour, the engine off, feeling like I'd just stepped off a ledge that had appeared out of nowhere. That evening, I didn't mention the call. I just watched her. The woman who came home was a ghost of the one I'd married. Her gaze ducked mine in the hallway. She turned down dinner, claiming she wasn't hungry, and took a small plate into the living room, sitting with her back to me, eyes fixed on a show she'd never watched before. Even the way she held the remote seemed like a performance, a prop to feign occupation. Lying in bed that night, the space between us on the mattress felt like a canyon. She was curled away from me, a tight, defensive ball. We hadn't been intimate in almost a month. This wasn't a dry spell. This was a deliberate drought. I replayed the last few weeks in my head. The trip, the distance, the phone, and the pieces clicked into a shape I didn't want to see. Her phone screen would light up the dark room at intervals, a beacon of her secret life. She'd turned off the lock screen preview last month, she'd said, for privacy. On Thursday, I scheduled a follow-up test at a different lab. I needed one more reality check, one more voice in a sterile room to confirm the truth before I confronted her. That night, I watched her rinse her plate and walk upstairs without a single word. I sat alone at the kitchen table, the hum of the dishwasher filling the silence. Every clink of glass echoed the emptiness of the room. I opened my phone and scrolled through her social media, something I rarely did. Her posts had all but stopped. No new pictures of us in months. But her stories were active. Vague city views, blurry wine glasses, and captions that meant nothing and everything all at once. One story from the wedding weekend caught my eye. A short clip of flashing lights, loud music, and two shadows clinking glasses. The other person was just a silhouette, but on their wrist was a watch I'd never seen. By Saturday, the silence in our house had become so heavy I could feel its weight in my bones. The weather was perfect, the kind of day we would have spent in the yard together. Instead, we passed each other like strangers. That afternoon, I stood in the garage staring at our wedding photo hanging above my workbench. Her smile was effortless. My arm was around her waist, my expression proud and certain. I hadn't seen that man, or that woman, in a long time. I knew then I couldn't live in a house full of secrets and lockdown phones any longer. Sunday morning, I sat at the kitchen table and opened my phone to the new lab report. The results were identical. I took a screenshot and waited. She came downstairs in a gray hoodie that wasn't mine, some unfamiliar logo on the chest. She moved with a practiced calm, pouring coffee, stirring it twice, opening the fridge, all while hoping I wouldn't break the fragile piece. But I was done with pretending. I told her I got my test results back. The spoon in her hand froze mid-stir. She stared out the window as if I hadn't spoken. I placed my phone on the table, the screen angled toward her. Her shoulders tensed as she glanced at it. She finally said she didn't understand, her voice a careful mix of confusion and calculation. I told her I thought she did.
That's when the temperature in the room plummeted. She set her mug down, folded her arms, and sat across from me. Her posture screamed control, but her eyes darted to the phone. She asked if I was accusing her of something. I let the silence stretch before responding that I wasn't accusing, I was asking for an explanation only she could provide. She claimed the test could be wrong. I informed her I'd already confirmed it with a second lab. The silence that followed was absolute. Then the first lie came. She said it was just a kiss, nothing more, a line delivered like she'd rehearsed it in the shower. I leaned forward and reminded her that's not how these things work. The mask slipped. She admitted it happened once during the wedding weekend, that she was drunk and didn't mean for it to happen. It was a neat, tidy confession designed for damage control. I asked who he was. The pause before her answer told me everything. Someone from college, she said, another guest. It wasn't planned. I nodded toward the hoodie she was wearing and asked if it was his. Her expression shifted from defense to offense. She accused me of blowing things out of proportion, as if discovering betrayal through medical paperwork was an overreaction. I told her she had other options. She could have talked to me, she could have left, but she chose this. She insisted she didn't come home planning to hurt me. I countered that she didn't come home planning to tell the truth either. Then came the classic pivot. She stood up, wrapping her arms around herself, and began to talk about how lonely she'd been, how I was always working, how we never connected anymore. It wasn't an explanation, it was a smokescreen, an attempt to justify her actions by painting me as the neglectful husband. I told her I worked to build a life for us, that I thought she was worth the sacrifice. She sat back down and said quietly, almost to herself, that she just didn't think I'd find out. And that was the whole truth. The game had simply ended sooner than she'd expected. In the days that followed, she tried to recalibrate. The cold, distant stranger was replaced by a woman desperate to regain control. She offered to make my favorite dinner, asked about my day, kissed me on the cheek before bed. It wasn't remorse, it was a strategy. One night she suggested a movie, putting her head on my shoulder as if nothing had changed. I sat there, arms crossed, a fortress of stillness. She sensed the resistance and asked if I was going to punish her forever. I turned off the TV and told her this wasn't punishment, it was recognition.
She began making nostalgic breakfasts and bringing up counseling, saying she'd made a mistake and didn't want to lose me. But her words were driven by consequence, not conscience. I told her I needed space. That space panicked her. She started texting constantly, asking where I was, who I was with. The irony was staggering. I responded with cordial, measured detachment. By the end of the week, she moved into the guest room, claiming she couldn't sleep next to someone so cold. She was losing her grip, and her mood swung wildly from tearful apologies to accusations of me being dramatic. All I was doing was holding up a mirror, and she hated the reflection. She didn't know it yet, but I was already rewriting our ending. The morning I met with the attorney, a gate closed inside me. It wasn't a slam of rage, but a quiet seal on a chapter that had already expired. I dressed with intention, like I was heading to a performance review at work. This was a meeting with consequences, and I would meet them with clarity. The lawyer was a man who'd seen this story 1,000 times. I laid out the facts, the diagnosis, the admission, the trickle-truthing. I had already gathered half the documents he needed. He noted that I'd already accepted the reality. Over the next few days, I followed his instructions with the precision of a logistics manager. I itemized accounts, reviewed assets, and changed passwords. Quietly, systematically, I was dismantling the life we had built, one piece at a time. That Thursday, she was in the kitchen setting up an apology dinner. Pasta, candles, the works. I let her finish before I spoke. I told her we needed to talk. I pulled out a manila envelope and informed her I'd met with a lawyer and that this was a preliminary filing. The ladle she was holding dropped into the pot with a splash. She asked what I was talking about. I stated plainly that I was moving forward with divorce proceedings. Her face cycled through disbelief, panic, and then anger. She insisted she was sorry, that it was a mistake, that it was only one time. I told her she was only sorry because I knew. She asked if I was really throwing away 12 years. I corrected her. She had thrown it away the moment she crossed the line. I was just cleaning up the debris. Over the next week, she moved through the house like a ghost. She tried one last time, making coffee, sitting across from me, and saying we'd been through worse. I told her this wasn't worse. This was a choice. Her lip trembled, but no tears came. She finally whispered that I was really done. I didn't have to answer. The legal process moved forward. She called my sister, trying to rally support, but I shut it down with a simple text. I'm handling it. She tried confronting me in the garage, minimizing her affair again. I told her that a mistake is spilling coffee, but gambling with my health and hiding it was an act of dismissal. That quieted her. Her influence dissolved in proportion to my silence. The divorce was finalized on a cold Tuesday morning. I drove home through familiar streets that felt entirely new. Her things were already gone. We had exchanged the last of her belongings in a 27-minute interaction that was all logistics and no emotion. That night, I stood in my silent kitchen and poured a glass of water. For the first time in months, the house held peace instead of pretense. I reprogrammed the thermostat to my own preference. In the weeks that followed, the absence of chaos became my new normal. I reconnected with old friends, fixed things around the house I'd long ignored, and reclaimed the quiet rhythms of my own life. I ran into her once at the grocery store. A brief, awkward encounter in the produce aisle. She told me I looked good. I thanked her, said I hoped she was doing okay, and walked away. I don't carry the anger anymore. The lesson I learned wasn't about betrayal, but about clarity. A man can give and give, but once he recognizes his dignity is being traded for convenience, he has to act. I simply stopped participating in a performance I never auditioned for. There is a profound power in letting go with grace, and an even deeper peace in knowing you didn't need to break someone else to break free. She made her choice, and I, finally, made mine. My respect for myself is intact, and that is a foundation that no one can ever take from me again.
Frank, you can just feel the pressure building through that whole letter. The silence in that house must have been deafening.
Good. That silence was his friend. It was the sound of him taking back control. My first thought reading this, Cal, good for him.
That's not what most people would say. They'd say, "I'm so sorry," or "How tragic." But you're saying, "Good for him." Walk me through that. Why is that your immediate takeaway?
Because he didn't collapse. Look, the average guy gets hit with news like that, a phone call from a doctor of all things, and he crumbles. He feels hurt, betrayed, sad, and all those feelings are a poison. They make you weak. They make you a victim. Darren felt the initial shock, the fracture he talked about, but he didn't stay there. He processed it, and that shock turned into something useful. It turned into cold, hard anger.
He describes it as a kind of clarity. He felt like a gate closed inside him. A lot of guys would fight that feeling. They'd think being cold or angry makes them the bad guy.
That's the programming. The world tells you to be empathetic, to understand her side of it, to heal. That's a trap. In a situation like this, anger is not an emotion. It's fuel. Sadness makes you sit in your truck in the parking lot and cry. Anger makes you put the truck in gear and drive to a second lab to get confirmation. It makes you start gathering intelligence. Sadness is passive. Anger is active. It's the engine for taking back your life.
So you're saying that emotional switch, from being the hurt husband to the man with a plan, is the single most important first step?
It's everything. It's the moment you stop being the person something happened to, and you become the person who is going to do something about it. He stopped seeing himself as a victim and started seeing himself as the guy who had a serious problem to solve, a logistics problem, right in his own house. And what does a logistics man do? He assesses the damage, identifies the failed component, and he charts a new route. He doesn't sit around wishing the bridge hadn't collapsed. He finds another way across the river.
That's a powerful way to frame it. For the guys listening, we want to hear from you on this. Let us know in the comments. Have you ever felt that switch flip from hurt to cold anger? That moment you went from victim to strategist. We want to hear about it.
Yeah, I want to see those.
Okay, Frank, let's get into the strategy here. Let's break down Darren's playbook, step by step. He gets the call on Wednesday. He doesn't go home and blow up. He sits in his truck, he thinks, then he goes home and just watches. Frank, walk me through it. Where did this guy make his first mistake, or did he play it perfectly from the start?
He played the opening perfectly. His first move was to do nothing. That's a pro move. The amateur goes in hot. He storms into the house, throws the phone on the table, and starts yelling. And what happens? She cries. She denies. She turns it around on him. He's the angry, accusatory husband. He loses all leverage because he gave away his position before he had all the intel.
Right. He let his emotions drive his tactics.
Exactly. But Darren, he went into surveillance mode. He became a ghost in his own house. He watched her. The way she held her phone. The way she wouldn't meet his eyes. The wedding ring on the nightstand. He was collecting data points. He was building a case, not starting a fight. He didn't have one piece of evidence from the doctor. He went and got a second, independent confirmation. This is critical. Never go to war based on a single piece of intelligence. You verify.
It's like he was treating his own life with the same professionalism he treats his job. No assumptions, just facts.
It's the only way to operate when the stakes are this high. He's dealing with a compromised asset, his marriage, his home. You don't make a move until you know the full extent of the damage. It's like finding a crack in the foundation of a building. You don't just run out and buy some concrete patch. You bring in an engineer. You do sonar tests. You find out if that crack is cosmetic or if the whole damn structure is about to come down on your head. Darren spent from Wednesday to Sunday being his own structural engineer.
And during that time, he saw the other little details, like the hoodie she was wearing. That had to be a gut punch.
Of course, it's a flag from the enemy planted right in his own command center. But again, look at his discipline. He clocked it. He filed it away. He didn't react. He waited for the right moment to deploy that piece of information. That's battlefield discipline.
So let's move to that moment. Sunday morning, he has the second lab report. He's ready. He doesn't yell. He just puts his phone on the table. Talk about that as a tactic.
It's checkmate in one move. He controls the frame completely. He doesn't say, "You cheated on me." He says, "I got my test results back." He presents an undeniable fact, a piece of sterile, scientific data. He makes her react to his reality. And what does she do? She immediately goes into her own playbook, the liar's playbook.
The denial, the confusion. I don't understand.
Textbook. Phase 1 is plausible deniability. He shuts that down immediately by mentioning the second lab, so she has to pivot. She moves to phase 2, minimization. It was just a kiss. It's a test balloon. She's seen how stupid he's willing to be.
And he pops that balloon instantly. That's not how these things work.
Beautiful. A simple, factual statement. No emotion, just a correction. So she has to pivot again. Phase 3, the controlled confession. It happened once. I was drunk. It didn't mean anything. This is the story she prepared in the shower. It's designed to give him just enough to make him feel like he got the truth, but it walls off the rest of the crime scene. It's a plea bargain she's offering him.
And that's when he deploys the intel about the hoodie. Is it his?
Devastating. Absolutely devastating. Because in that one quiet question, he tells her, "I know more than you think I know. Your story isn't holding up." He signals that he's not just working off the lab report. He's been watching. He's been paying attention. Her whole defensive structure just got a wrecking ball put through it.
So am I right in thinking the game was already over at that point? For the marriage, I mean.
The marriage was over the second she made her choice on that trip. This conversation was just the demolition notice. But her next move tells you everything you need to know about her character. She doesn't break down in remorse. She pivots to offense. Phase 4, the justification.
The "I was lonely" speech. You work too much. The classic reversal.
The smokescreen. It's an attempt to make her betrayal a symptom of his failure. She's trying to make him a co-conspirator in his own destruction. And I want every man listening to burn this into his brain. This is never a valid excuse. It is a manipulation tactic. Full stop. If she's lonely, she talks to you. If she's unhappy, she leaves. She doesn't secretly set the house on fire and then blame you for not noticing she was cold.
Darren's response was perfect, though. "I worked to build a life for us. I thought you were worth the sacrifice."
10 out of 10. He didn't defend himself. He simply stated his own truth, and in doing so, completely dismantled her entire argument. He reminded her of the contract. He provides, he protects. Her role is loyalty and order. He held up his end. She voided the agreement. End of story. And then she says the quiet part out loud.
"I just didn't think I'd find out."
And there it is, the whole truth. This wasn't about loneliness. It wasn't a mistake. It was a calculated risk that failed. Her only regret was getting caught. The game was over, and she'd lost.
So the confrontation is done. The truth is out, or at least part of it. And then she tries to recalibrate. The favorite dinners, the apologies, the talk of counseling. This is the part where so many men get dragged back into the mud.
This is the second wave of the insurgency. The frontal assault failed, so now she's trying to win a guerrilla war. She's using soft power, nostalgia, guilt, the promise of fixing things. She's trying to find a crack in his resolve. This is the most dangerous phase for a man who is still emotionally compromised.
But Darren wasn't. He describes himself as a fortress of stillness. He just sat there while she put her head on his shoulder.
Because he understood what was happening. He recognized it as a strategy, not genuine remorse. Frank's rule of thumb: remorse that is prompted by consequence is not remorse at all. It's damage control. She wasn't sorry for what she did. She was sorry for what she was about to lose. her comfortable life, her security. He was right to give her nothing. No anger, no forgiveness, just nothing. A brick wall. His silence became his greatest weapon.
It seemed to drive her crazy. She starts accusing him of punishing her, of being cold.
Of course, when a manipulator can't get the reaction they want from you, they accuse you of being the problem. He wasn't punishing her. He was just refusing to continue playing the game. As he put it, he was holding up a mirror, and she hated what she saw.
Let me ask the guys listening. You're at this point in the story. You've weathered the confrontation. Now she's launching the "let's fix this" campaign. She's crying, she's cooking your favorite meal, she's promising to change. Looking at this point in the story, what would your next move have been? Lay out your strategy in the comments. I'm curious to see who understands the game. Okay, Frank, so Darren has held the line, he's given her nothing, then he makes his next big move. He goes to see an attorney. He says a gate closed inside him. That feels like the real point of no return.
That's the moment he went from defense to offense. Up until then, he was reacting, holding his ground. The meeting with the lawyer was his first strategic offense. He was no longer just the guy trying to figure out what happened. He was now the architect of the future, his future.
And look how he did it, methodically. He didn't just go and vent to the lawyer. He showed up with documents. He was prepared. He treated it like a business negotiation, where the other party had already breached the contract.
This is what I mean when I talk about damage liquidation. The asset, the marriage, is a total loss. Now the job is to dissolve the partnership in a way that protects your remaining assets and your dignity. You don't do that with emotion. You do it with spreadsheets, account numbers, and a clear-eyed understanding of the facts. He was dismantling the life they built with the same precision he used to manage freight schedules. Quietly, systematically, no drama.
And then, the final scene. The apology dinner she's setting up. The candles, the pasta, her last-ditch effort. And he just walks in and hands her the envelope.
It's brutal, and it's perfect. He didn't let her set the stage. He didn't get drawn into one last, tearful, manipulative conversation over dinner. He walked in, saw her attempt to control the narrative, and he shut it down with a manila envelope. That envelope was the realest thing in that room. It was the consequence she had been trying to avoid, sitting right there on the table next to the garlic bread.
She asked if he was throwing away 12 years. His answer? You threw it away. I'm just cleaning up the debris.
It's the perfect line, because it's the truth. He's not the destroyer here, he's the cleanup crew. He's taken a situation she created and he's restoring order. That one sentence completely reframes the entire event. He's not the bad guy ending the marriage, he's the responsible party dealing with a mess he didn't make. It left her with nothing to say.
Her power was completely gone at that point.
Dissolved. Because her power was based on secrets, on his ignorance, on his assumed willingness to forgive. Once he had the facts and decided not to forgive, she had no leverage left. She was just a tenant in his house with an eviction notice in her hand.
So let's talk about the aftermath. The divorce is finalized. He's in the house alone. And he doesn't describe himself as broken or lonely. He talks about peace, the absence of chaos. That's not the ending we're usually sold for a story like this.
Because the story we're usually sold is written by people who profit from male weakness. They want you to think divorce has to be this soul-crushing trauma that you spend years in therapy recovering from. And for some guys, it is. The guys who never take control, who let themselves be victims to the very end. But Darren? He didn't go through a victim's divorce. He executed a planned demolition. The end result wasn't a ruin, it was a cleared lot, ready for new construction.
He talks about reclaiming the quiet rhythms of his own life, reconnecting with friends, fixing things. He even reprogrammed the thermostat. That sounds like a small detail, but it felt huge when I read it.
It's the biggest detail in the whole damn letter. For years, that thermostat was probably a negotiation, a compromise. It's too cold, it's too hot. It's a tiny, daily symbol of the shared space. The moment he set it to his own preference, without having to ask or argue, he declared that the space was his again, 100%. He reclaimed his territory, down to the temperature of the air he was breathing. That's not healing, Cal. That's victory.
And what about that final run-in at the grocery store? He was just polite. He wished her well and walked away. A lot of guys would have wanted to get in one last dig, or at least give her a cold shoulder.
And that would have been a mistake. That would have shown her she still had a hook in him, that she could still generate an emotional response. His response, that calm, detached politeness, was the ultimate statement of his freedom. It was like running into a former coworker from a job you quit years ago. You're cordial, but you're not invested. They are a part of your past. She was no longer his wife, not even his ex-wife. She was just a person in the produce aisle. Indifference is a greater show of power than contempt ever will be.
He says the lesson wasn't about betrayal, but about clarity, that he just stopped participating in a performance he never auditioned for.
That's a man who gets it. He understood that his wife had created a fiction, a play, where he was the stable, dependable husband and she had a secret life on the side. And for a while, he was playing his part without knowing the script. The moment he found out, he didn't try to rewrite the scenes. He walked off the stage, turned the house lights on, and told the audience to go home. The show is over.
It's a story about regaining self-respect. He says that's a foundation no one can take from him again.
And he's right. He didn't just divorce his wife. He divorced the weakness inside himself that was willing to believe a lie because it was comfortable. He tested his own foundations and found they were solid. He can build anything on that. A man's self-respect is the only piece of ground he truly owns. Darren secured his property.
For those of you who have been through a similar fire, who have had to tear it all down and start over, tell us how you rebuilt things on your own terms. Your story could be a blueprint for another man who's just starting to clear the rubble. Share it in the comments.
Yeah, good.
So Frank, as we wrap this up, for the man listening to this who might be seeing some of these same red flags in his own life, the phone that's suddenly a fortress, the unexplained distance, what are the core rules from Darren's playbook that he needs to remember?
It comes down to 3 things for me. Rule number 1, never wage a war on emotion. Your gut can tell you something is wrong, and you should listen to it, but you don't act until you have cold, hard facts to back it up. Get your intelligence. Build your case. Operate from a position of knowledge, not suspicion.
Control what you can control.
Right. Rule number 2, when you engage, you control the frame. You don't accuse, you present evidence. Make them react to your facts, not your feelings. The moment you start yelling, you lose. Stay calm, stay deliberate, and let their lies hang themselves.
And the third?
Rule number 3 is the most important. Recognize the difference between genuine remorse and a fear of consequences. One is about the pain they caused you. The other is about the inconvenience they're about to suffer. A woman who is truly sorry doesn't make excuses. She doesn't blame you. She owns her mutiny. If all you're getting is damage control and manipulation, then your only move is to protect yourself and liquidate the asset. Don't negotiate with terrorists in your own home.
Simple, clear, and direct. Frank, as always, thank you. And a huge thank you to Darren for trusting us with his story. It's a masterclass in dignity and control, and I have no doubt it's going to help a lot of men out there. To everyone listening, thank you for your time.
If you want to make sure you don't miss the next episode, subscribe and hit that like button. Stay sharp.